Staff Sergeant Samantha Sam Reynolds had killed 37 people in her 6-year career, and not one of them ever saw her coming. The Alaska wind howled across the snow-covered ridge where Sam lay motionless, her body temperature barely distinguishable from the frozen ground beneath her. The air burned at minus 30 degrees Celsius, cold enough to freeze exposed skin in minutes and kill the unprepared within hours. But Sam had grown up in these mountains. Cold was just another variable to calculate, like wind speed or bullet drop. Through the Schmidt and Bender 525-56 PMTI scope, mounted on her Mk13 Mod 7 sniper rifle, Sam watched 4 men move with practiced precision across a valley floor 750 meters below her position. Navy SEALs, Team 6, the best America had to offer. Lieutenant Commander Mark Sullivan led the element, his movements disciplined and controlled. Senior Chief Jason Reed provided overwatch, scanning sectors with mechanical efficiency. Petty Officers Carlos Mendez and Eric Davidson covered the flanks, maintaining perfect spacing as they advanced through the rugged terrain near the Alaska-Canada border. Sam had been shadowing them for 3 days now. The SEALs were tracking a weapons smuggling operation with suspected ties to former Russian intelligence operatives. High-value mission, critical intelligence. But they had no idea that someone was watching over them, a guardian angel with a Winchester Magnum and 6 years of experience eliminating threats before they materialized. The Guardian Sniper program existed in the shadows of America's special operations community, a classified initiative that paired elite snipers with special operations teams conducting high-risk missions. The Guardians operated alone, maintained extreme distances, and eliminated threats without the protected teams ever knowing they were there. In the 6 years since its inception, the program had saved countless lives without receiving a single accolade or public acknowledgement. That's exactly how they wanted it. Sam shifted her position with microscopic movements, careful not to disturb the ghillie suit that blended her outline with the surrounding terrain. Her auburn hair was tightly braided beneath a white thermal hood, her gray-green eyes focused through the scope with predatory intensity. The Mk13's barrel was wrapped in cloth to mask its heat signature, and a specialized suppressor would reduce its report to a mere crack when fired. On her 3rd day of Overwatch, Sam allowed her mind to drift briefly to the man who had recruited her into the program. Colonel William Wild Bill Harrison, now 62, had been a legend in special operations circles long before creating the Guardians. A veteran of multiple Middle Eastern conflicts and former Special Forces operative, Harrison had spotted Sam's potential when she was struggling to be taken seriously at sniper school. Reynolds, he'd said, after watching her outshoot men with twice her experience, "The best predators are the ones nobody expects." Harrison was pushing retirement now, but still oversaw the program from a distance, occasionally providing guidance via encrypted channels when operations went sideways. Sam trusted his judgment more than anyone else in the chain of command. He understood what it meant to operate alone, to carry the weight of other people's lives, to make impossible decisions without hesitation. The radio on Sam's tactical vest crackled with static before Sullivan's voice came through, updating his team's position to their command center. The SEAL team had stopped in a small depression to verify coordinates and check their communications. Sam watched them through her scope, mentally calculating distances, wind patterns, potential threat vectors. Everything looked normal until it didn't. Movement on the eastern ridgeline caught her attention. Sam adjusted her scope and felt her heart rate elevate slightly as she processed what she was seeing. Armed personnel establishing positions overlooking the valley. At least 20 of them moving with the disciplined precision that spoke of professional military training. These weren't local militants or cartel enforcers. They were setting up crew-served weapons and designated marksman positions in a classic L-shaped ambush formation, with the SEAL team positioned directly in the kill zone. Sam's focus narrowed as she scanned the enemy force, cataloging weapons positions and tactical patterns. Then her blood turned colder than the Alaskan wind when she recognized the man directing the operation. 6'3", broad-shouldered, with a distinctive scar running from his left temple to his jaw. Nikolai Volkov, former Spetsnaz operator, elite Russian special forces. 3 years ago in Afghanistan, Sam had watched through her scope as Volkov and his team ambushed and killed an entire Delta Force unit she'd been assigned to protect. She'd put a round through Volkov's shoulder, but he'd survived. The after-action review had classified it as a mission failure, the only one in Sam's record. She had memorized every detail of Volkov's face, studied his tactics, sworn that if she ever encountered him again, the outcome would be different. And now here he was, orchestrating another ambush against American special operators. Sam keyed her radio using the encrypted frequency that connected her to both the SEAL team and their tactical operations center. SEAL 1, this is Overwatch. You have hostile forces establishing ambush positions on Eastern Ridgeline, bearing 085 from your position. I count at least 20 personnel with heavy weapons. Recommend immediate displacement. There was a pause before Sullivan's voice came back sharp with surprise and suspicion. Overwatch, there's no sniper element assigned to this operation. Identify yourself in authorization code. Sam provided her call sign and authentication while continuing to monitor the enemy force through her scope. Volkov was directing his men with practiced efficiency, positioning a PKM machine gun team where they would have perfect enfilade fire across the valley floor. RPG-7 teams with thermobaric warheads were setting up on the flanks. Designated marksmen with SVD Dragunov rifles were selecting elevated positions. Command confirms no Guardian deployment for this mission. Sullivan responded, his tone now edged with urgency. Can you confirm hostile intent? Through her scope, Sam watched a sniper team chamber rounds in their rifles. No question about their intentions. SEAL 1, they're setting up an L-shaped ambush with your position as the kill zone. Heavy machine guns, multiple RPG teams with thermobaric warheads, at least 4 designated marksmen. Professional operators, not locals. This is a planned operation with specific intelligence on your mission. You need to move now. Before Sullivan could respond, the first shot cracked across the valley. Sam watched Mendez spin and drop his leg, collapsing under him as a round tore through his thigh. Not a kill shot, a deliberate wound to immobilize and draw the others into exposing themselves while rendering care. Classic Volkov. Machine gun fire erupted from multiple positions, saturating the area where the SEALs had taken cover. RPGs streaked through the cold air, detonating against rocks and frozen ground. The SEALs returned fire with disciplined bursts, but they were pinned down in terrain that offered minimal protection and no viable escape routes. Sam assessed the tactical situation with cold precision. The hostile force was approximately 1,800 meters from her position, with the SEALs caught in between at 1,750 meters. She had clear lines of sight to most of the enemy positions, but the extreme range-gusting winds and temperature variables made accurate fire challenging even for someone with her skills. Guardian protocol dictated that she should maintain her distance and provide precision fire from her current position while calling for additional support. But Sam could see that the math didn't work. The SEALs would be overrun or killed within 15 minutes. The nearest quick reaction force was at least an hour away by helicopter, and deteriorating weather conditions meant air support was unlikely to arrive in time. Sam made her decision without hesitation. She reached for the secure satellite phone nestled in her gear and connected to a number only 5 people in the world knew existed. Sierra Tango 7, she said when the connection established. Overwatch compromised. SEAL team under attack by professional force. Requesting authorization for direct intervention. Colonel Harrison's voice came back immediately, weathered by age but still commanding. Situation assessment. 20-plus hostiles, former Russian special operations by tactics and equipment. SEAL team pinned with 1 wounded already. No extraction possible. Standard protocols insufficient to prevent casualties. There was a brief pause during which Sam could almost hear Harrison weighing the implications. Guardian snipers operated from distance. That was the entire point of the program. Breaking protocol meant potential exposure of a classified initiative, risk to the operator, and unpredictable consequences. Tactical lead is Nikolai Volkov, Sam added, knowing what that name would mean to Harrison. Volkov, Harrison's tone hardened. Rules exist to protect the mission, Reynolds. But sometimes the mission changes. Another pause then. Authorization granted. Guidelines become suggestions when American lives are at risk. Do what needs to be done. Sam was already moving before the call ended, breaking down her hide position with practiced efficiency. She secured the Mk-13 across her back and transitioned to the M4A1 carbine that would be better suited for what she was about to do. Close the distance and engage a numerically superior force at ranges where her technical shooting skills could be combined with aggressive tactical movement. She keyed her radio one more time. SEAL 1, this is Overwatch. I'm moving to your position. Maintain suppressive fire on eastern ridgeline. I'll be approaching from the northwest. Do not fire in that direction. Over. Overwatch, you're supposed to maintain separation. That's the entire point of Sullivan's transmission was cut off by another burst of machine gun fire. Lieutenant, with respect, the rulebook just became irrelevant. Your team is about to be overrun, and I'm the only asset close enough to do anything about it. I'm moving now. Just keep your people alive. Sam began traversing the Alaskan terrain with controlled aggression, balancing speed against the risk of injury. 800 meters of snow-covered ground scattered rocks and frozen streams that could break an ankle with one misstep. Under normal circumstances, it would take 20 to 30 minutes to cross safely. Sam covered it in 9 using every fold in the terrain for concealment, moving through draws and behind ridgelines, always staying in dead ground where the hostile force couldn't observe her approach. The temperature was brutal, but adrenaline kept her warm and focused. The M4A1 carbine was ready in her hands, spare magazines positioned for quick access, grenades staged for immediate use. The KA-bar combat knife strapped to her thigh might become her primary weapon if things got really intimate. At 300 meters from the nearest hostile position, Sam could see the full scope of the ambush. Volkov had established 3 primary firing positions in a rough L shape round the valley with additional fighters providing security and ammunition resupply. Sam registered every detail with tactical precision: weapons placement, fields of fire, avenues of approach, potential weaknesses. Professional setup executed with tactical competence, but they'd made one critical mistake. All their security and attention was focused on the valley where the SEALs were pinned. No one was watching their rear approaches because who would be crazy enough to attack a 20-man force from behind in the middle of an Alaskan winter? Sam Reynolds would. And she was about to demonstrate exactly why that oversight was fatal. She approached from the northwest, the direction they weren't expecting threats. Her first targets were 2 fighters providing rear security. Their job was to prevent exactly what Sam was about to do, but they were cold, tired, and focused more on the firefight than maintaining proper vigilance. Both went down to suppressed fire before they even realized someone was behind them. Sam moved past their bodies, already acquiring her next target, a machine gun positioned 20 meters ahead. 3 fighters working the weapon while maintaining sustained fire on the SEAL position. She closed to within 15 meters before engaging, dropping all 3 with controlled pairs to the head and center mass. 2 rounds each. Verify the kill. Transition to next threat. The machine gun fell silent and confusion rippled through the hostile positions as fighters tried to determine why their supporting fire had stopped. Several started moving toward the silenced position, and Sam made them pay for that decision. She engaged from behind a boulder, her M4 finding targets with mechanical precision. 4 more fighters down before the rest realized they were being attacked from behind. The coordinated ambush began fragmenting into chaos as the enemy force split its attention between the SEALs in front and the unknown threat behind them. Sam used the confusion to reposition, employing smoke grenades to mask her movement before concentrated fire could find her. She could hear Volkov shouting orders in Russian, trying to regain control of a rapidly deteriorating situation. Neizvestneo groza Sazadi. Vtoraya grupa razvernite, unknown threat from behind. Second group redeploy. That's when Sullivan's voice came over the radio, tense but controlled. Unknown friendly, this is SEAL 1. We're seeing reduced enemy fire. What's your position and status? Sam keyed her radio while reloading. SEAL 1, this is Overwatch. I'm approximately 200 meters northeast of your position, currently engaged with hostile element from their rear. I've eliminated their primary machine gun support and reduced their effective strength by about a third, but I'm taking fire from multiple positions now. There was a pause, then Sullivan came back, sounding somewhere between disbelief and relief. Overwatch, I thought Guardian snipers operated from distance. Normally we do, Lieutenant. Today I'm improvising. Can you provide suppressive fire and bearing 045 from your position? I've got enemy fighters regrouping in that direction and could use some help. Copy that. Stand by for support fire. The SEAL team opened up with precision fire on the positions Sam had indicated their rounds, forcing the hostile fighters to seek cover and disrupting their attempts to coordinate against her. With the pressure momentarily relieved, Sam moved again, relocating to a position that gave her better angles on the remaining threats. She worked methodically through the enemy ranks, an RPG gunner trying to get into position, two riflemen attempting to flank the SEAL team, another machine gunner setting up in a new location. Each engagement was quick and decisive. Identify the threat, engage with the controlled fire, confirm the hit move before return fire could locate her position. Through her scope, Sam caught glimpses of Volkov directing his forces trying to adapt to the unexpected threat. She marked his position but held her fire. He was staying well protected, using his men as shields while he assessed the situation. Smart, but sooner or later he would make a mistake and Sam would be waiting. As she was shifting position again, Sam overheard a radio transmission from one of the enemy fighters. The man was speaking in rapid Russian, but Sam's years of training allowed her to catch fragments. Aurora has been compromised. Biely Medved demands the USB drive at any cost. Aurora, White Bear, USB drive, intelligence fragments that made Sam reassess the entire operation. This wasn't just an opportunistic attack on an American Special Operations team. Volkov and his men were after specific intelligence, something the SEALs had acquired during their mission. Something important enough that they were willing to commit significant resources to obtain it. The hostile force was collapsing under pressure from two directions. What had begun as a professional ambush had deteriorated into a desperate fight for survival. Some fighters attempted to withdraw, but they were moving across terrain that the SEALs could now observe clearly. The Americans had found their rhythm, coordinating fire with Sam's movements, creating overlapping fields of fire that left the enemy force with diminishing options. After 20 minutes of sustained combat, the battlefield fell silent, except for the wind howling across the Alaskan landscape. The hostile force had been destroyed or driven off, with at least 16 confirmed kills. Sam conducted a careful scan of the area, confirming no immediate threats remained before keying her radio. SEAL 1 Overwatch. Hostile force has been neutralized or dispersed. I'm moving to your location to assist with casualty treatment. She approached the SEAL position, carefully announcing her presence well in advance and waiting for confirmation before moving into view. When she finally emerged from behind the rocks, all four SEALs stared at her with expressions that suggested they were trying to reconcile multiple contradictory pieces of information. Sam pulled back her white winter hood, revealing a face weathered by 6 years of operations in harsh environments. Auburn hair braided tight against her skull, gray-green eyes that missed nothing, a small scar above her left eyebrow from an operation in Syria. She moved immediately to where Mendez was sitting against a rock, his leg bleeding but already bandaged by his teammates. "Let me see that wound," she said, kneeling beside him and pulling out her trauma kit. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, checking the bandage, verifying that the bullet had passed through muscle without hitting bone or major vessels, administering pain medication, and securing a better dressing. Mendez watched her work with a mixture of pain and fascination. "Ma'am, who exactly are you?" Staff Sergeant Samantha Reynolds, Guardian Sniper Program. "I've been providing overwatch for your operation for the past 3 days. Sullivan, who'd been scanning for threats while Reed provided security, turned to face her directly. 3 days, we've been operating independently. There was no mention of Guardian support in our mission brief. That's how Guardian operations work, Lieutenant. You don't know we're there. We shadow special operations teams from distance, eliminate threats before they develop, provide early warning of enemy movements, and generally make sure you can focus on your mission objectives without worrying about security beyond your immediate perimeter." Sam finished treating Mendez's wound and stood meeting Sullivan's skeptical gaze directly. "Usually we maintain complete separation and you never know we exist. This situation was exceptional." Reed, a veteran SEAL with multiple combat tours, spoke up. "Ma'am, I've worked with sniper overwatch elements from every service branch. What you just did wasn't overwatch. That was direct action at close quarters against a numerically superior force. How many targets did you personally engage?" 16 confirmed. Possibly more, but I couldn't verify in the confusion. Sam said it matter-of-factly, without pride or false modesty. The tactical situation had required adaptation from standard Guardian protocols. The results spoke for themselves. Davidson, the youngest team member, couldn't help but ask, "You were tracking us for 3 days and we never knew you were there." "That's my job. Petty officer, Guardian snipers operate alone, maintain perfect concealment, and engage threats before teams even realize they're threatened. You've probably had Guardian overwatch on multiple previous operations without knowing it." Before the conversation could continue, the weather made its presence known. The wind that had been merely cold suddenly became savage, gusting with enough force to actually push people sideways. The temperature dropped noticeably and the sky took on the peculiar darkness that experienced operators recognized as warning of serious incoming weather. Sam looked at the darkening sky and felt the wind pattern with instincts honed by years in harsh environments. We need to find shelter immediately. There's a major storm system moving in probably within the next 30 minutes. Staying in this valley will be fatal. Sullivan trusted her judgment without question. Anyone who could do what she'd just done had earned that much credibility. Recommendations. There's an abandoned hunting cabin approximately 3 kilometers north of here. I identified it during my reconnaissance of this area 2 days ago. It'll provide protection from the wind and cold concealment from observation and defensible positions if we need them. Sullivan nodded toward Mendez. Can he move? The leg wound will hurt, but it won't prevent movement. I've administered pain medication, and the bleeding is controlled. We should rotate carrying his gear to reduce his load, but he can walk with assistance. They began moving immediately with Sam taking point because she had the best knowledge of the terrain en route to the cabin. Reed supported Mendez, who moved with gritted determination despite the pain. Sullivan and Davison provided security, constantly scanning for any remnants of the hostile force that might be regrouping. As they moved through the increasingly harsh conditions, Sullivan fell into step beside Sam. You said this was a planned operation with specific intelligence. How do you know that? Sam hesitated briefly before answering. The tactical lead is Nikolai Volkov, former Spetsnaz. I've encountered him before in Afghanistan. He specializes in ambushes against Western Special Operations teams. And I overheard radio communications suggesting they were specifically targeting whatever intelligence you acquired during your mission. Sullivan's expression darkened. The USB drive. They mentioned something called Aurora and someone referred to as White Bear or Bielý Medved in Russian. Does that mean anything to you? The look that crossed Sullivan's face told Sam everything she needed to know. The intelligence was significant, likely beyond the parameters of their original mission. That information is classified well above your clearance level, Staff Sergeant. Sam couldn't help but smile slightly at that. Lieutenant, I just violated about 15 protocols to save your team. I think we're past worrying about formal clearance levels, don't you? Before Sullivan could respond, the storm hit with unexpected ferocity, transforming the landscape into a white hell within minutes. Visibility dropped to less than 15 meters. Temperature plummeted to minus 40 degrees Celsius. The wind began shrieking across the mountains with enough force to make standing difficult. But Sam kept them moving, navigating by GPS and terrain memory through conditions that would have left most people hopelessly lost. They reached the cabin just as the storm reached full fury, the small structure barely visible through the whiteout conditions until they were almost upon it. The cabin wasn't large, but it was solid, built to withstand Alaskan winters by someone who understood what that meant. As they established their defensive position and tried to warm up, Sam noticed Sullivan examining her with a mixture of curiosity and lingering skepticism. Something on your mind, Lieutenant? Sullivan hesitated, then asked the question that had clearly been bothering him since she'd first appeared. Guardian snipers, how long has this program existed and why haven't I heard of it? 6 years. And you haven't heard of it because that's the point. We operate in complete secrecy even from the units we protect. The most successful Guardian operation is one where the team never knows we were there. And they assigned a woman to shadow a SEAL team. The question came out before Sullivan could stop it, his tone betraying old biases. Sam had heard this before. She'd been dealing with it her entire military career. They assigned the best qualified operator for the mission, Lieutenant. Gender wasn't a consideration. My record speaks for itself. 73 operations, 37 confirmed eliminations, 0 American casualties until today. Reed, who had been listening while treating Mendez, let out a low whistle. Those are impressive numbers, ma'am. The storm raged outside the cabin, the wind howling like something alive, and the temperature dropping to levels that would have killed anyone caught in the open within an hour. As they secured the perimeter and established watch rotations, Sam found herself thinking about Harrison and what he would say about her decision to break protocol. The old man had recruited her precisely because she could think beyond rigid doctrine, adapt when circumstances demanded it. He'd seen something in her that others had missed. Not just technical skill with a rifle, but the judgment to know when rules needed to be broken. As darkness fell and the storm showed no signs of abating, Sam rechecked Mendez's bandages while the others organized their equipment and rations. The SEAL was running a slight fever, not unexpected given the circumstances, but something to monitor closely. "You're from Alaska," Mendez said, noticing the practiced way Sam dealt with the extreme cold. "Born and raised. My father was a Marine sniper in Desert Storm. He taught me to shoot when I was 8, how to survive in this kind of weather when I was 10. Said the cold makes wish you honest. No room for mistakes up here." Sullivan, who had been listening while checking the cabin's perimeter, paused. "Desert Storm, what unit?" 3rd Battalion, 1st Marines. He was with the sniper section during the liberation of Kuwait. A look of recognition crossed Sullivan's face. "I was there. 3-1. First combat deployment as a young SEAL. We operated alongside Marine elements during several operations." He studied Sam's face more carefully now. "Reynolds, your father wouldn't have been Captain James Reynolds, would he?" Sam felt a jolt of surprise. "You knew him?" "Not directly, but I remember the name. He had a reputation for making shots nobody else would attempt. They called him Ghost because the enemy never saw him coming." A shadow crossed Sam's face. "That's right?" Sullivan seemed to sense the change in her demeanor. "I'm sorry, did he?" "Iraq, 2004. His patrol walked into an ambush. A sniper they never saw killed him, and 3 other Marines before they could respond." Sam's voice remained steady, but her eyes had gone distant. "I was 16 when it happened." The cabin fell silent except for the howling of the wind outside. Mendez and Davidson exchanged glances, while Reed simply nodded in understanding. The universal acknowledgement of loss that all warriors recognized. After a moment, Sullivan spoke again, his tone different now. "So that's why you joined. Why you became a guardian." "I wanted to be the person who prevented that from happening to other families. The invisible guardian who eliminates threats before they can kill good people who are just trying to do their jobs. Your father would be proud of what you do." Sam didn't respond immediately, focusing instead on securing Mendez's bandage. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet but resolute. "Maybe. Or maybe he'd think I was crazy for spending 6 years lying in frozen mud, making shots most people think are impossible. But it's not about what he'd think. It's about making sure other 16-year-old kids don't lose their parents to enemies they never saw coming." As night deepened and the storm continued its assault on the small cabin, Sam checked her satellite phone. No reception. The storm was blocking communications. They were on their own, at least until the weather cleared. She tried not to think about Volkov and whether he had survived the engagement. If he had, he wouldn't give up easily. The man was relentless, and whatever this Aurora project was, it clearly warranted extraordinary measures. Sam moved to the window, clearing a small section of frost to peer into the swirling whiteness outside. Somewhere out there, Volkov might be regrouping, planning his next move. And if he was, Sam would be ready. This time, she wouldn't let him escape. The invisible war between guardians and predators continued hidden from the world, but vital to its security. For tonight, at least, the guardians had won. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, but Sam Reynolds would face them as she always had, alone if necessary, with lethal precision and without expectation of recognition or reward. Because that was what guardians did. They stood watch in the darkness, making impossible shots and taking impossible risks, ensuring that good people came home alive to their families, whether those people knew they were being protected or not. Sam Reynolds awoke instantly, hand moving to the M4A1 beside her sleeping bag before her eyes had fully opened. Years of operating alone in hostile territory had honed her instincts to razor sharpness. Something had changed in the cabin's atmosphere. The howl of the Alaskan wind had diminished from a roar to a whisper. The storm was breaking. She checked her watch. 0517. She'd slept exactly 2 hours since her last watch shift, the disciplined catnap of a combat veteran who had learned to function on minimal rest. Outside the cabin's frost-covered windows, the darkness was beginning to yield to the gray pre-dawn light that passed for morning in the Alaskan winter. Davidson was on watch, his young face tense with concentration as he peered through a narrow gap in the window covering. Sullivan and Reed slept in tactical positions that would allow immediate response to threats, their weapons within arm's reach. Mendez lay on an improvised cot, his wounded leg elevated, breathing steady despite the fever that had developed overnight. Sam rose silently, stretching muscles stiffened by cold and combat. Her body cataloged a collection of minor injuries. Bruises from her rapid approach through rocky terrain, a shallow cut on her forearm from shrapnel during the firefight, the deep ache in her shoulders from carrying full combat load through knee-deep snow. None of it mattered. Pain was just information useful only if it affected operational capability. She moved to Davidson's position, noting the professional way he maintained security despite his youth. The SEAL acknowledged her with a slight nod, keeping his eyes on his sector. "Storm's dying," he whispered. "Visibility improving to about 50 meters and getting better." Sam peered through her own observation point, assessing the tactical situation. The cabin stood in a small clearing, surrounded by pine trees heavy with snow. A natural ridge rose behind it, providing both protection from the wind and a potential overwatch position. The front approach remained the most vulnerable, with approximately 80 meters of open ground between the cabin and the tree line. "Any movement?" Oddie asked. "Nothing human. Saw some wildlife about 20 minutes ago, probably caribou moving through the trees." Sam nodded, but something about Davidson's report triggered her intuition. Wildlife shouldn't be moving through an area where gunfire had erupted less than 12 hours earlier. Animals had better instincts than humans when it came to danger. She moved to her pack, retrieving a compact thermal scope and attaching it to her rifle. The technology would detect body heat through the visual camouflage of snow and trees, revealing what natural eyesight might miss. A methodical scan of the perimeter revealed nothing at first, just the expected temperature variations of the natural environment. Then a flash of heat signature approximately 200 meters out, barely distinguishable from background radiation. She adjusted the focus, concentrating on the anomaly. There it was again. Deliberate movement. Someone was out there using the storm's aftermath as concealment, positioning themselves with tactical patience. "Wake Sullivan," she whispered to Davidson, quietly. While the young SEAL roused his commander, Sam continued her scan, identifying 2 more heat signatures spaced at tactical intervals. Professional operators establishing a perimeter. Volkov hadn't given up. He was preparing another attack this time, with the advantages of surprise and preparation partially neutralized. Sullivan materialized beside her, instantly alert despite being awakened from deep sleep, the mark of a seasoned combat veteran. "We've got company," Sam murmured, passing him the thermal scope. "At least 3 operators establishing positions to the northwest, using the tree line for concealment. Probably more that I can't see from this angle." Sullivan confirmed her assessment with a quick scan, then handed back the scope. "Volkov has to be. He wouldn't abandon the mission, especially if this Aurora project is as important as it seems." Sullivan's jaw tightened. He studied Sam for a moment, then made a decision. "You've earned this much. Aurora is a Russian EMP weapon system capable of targeted electromagnetic pulse deployment without a nuclear trigger. It could disable American defense systems with surgical precision, creating windows of vulnerability in our early warning networks. We intercepted communications about a prototype being moved through this region for testing. The USB drive contains technical specifications and deployment protocols we recovered from a dead drop." The information crystallized the situation for Sam. This wasn't just about eliminating a SEAL team. It was about recovering critical intelligence that could affect national security at the highest levels. "That explains Volkov's persistence," she said. "And who's White Bear?" Sullivan shook his head. "Unknown. Possibly the operation commander or the project lead. The communications we intercepted only referenced the code name." Reed and Mendez were awake now, the latter wincing as he shifted his injured leg. Reed immediately began checking weapons and ammunition, while Davidson maintained his observation post. "What's the plan, sir?" Reed asked, his voice low but steady. Sullivan glanced at Sam, a silent acknowledgement that her expertise was valuable in this situation. "Reynolds, you know Volkov's tactics better than anyone here. What do you expect?" Sam considered the question, drawing on her encounter with Volkov in Afghanistan and yesterday's engagement. "He's a methodical operator. He'll have spent the night planning this attack, accounting for everything that went wrong yesterday. He knows we're injured, low on ammunition, and cut off from support. He'll expect us to be hunkered down, waiting for rescue." She moved to the cabin's rear window, scanning the ridge behind them. "His most likely approach will be to establish a base of fire from multiple directions, pin us down, then use the terrain to maneuver assault teams into position. In Afghanistan, he used smoke and suppressive fire to mask his final approach, then breached with specialized charges." Sullivan nodded, processing the information with professional detachment. Options. We have two. Dig in and defend or conduct a tactical withdrawal before he completes his preparations. With Mendez wounded, moving through this terrain will be slow, Reed pointed out. Sam met Sullivan's gaze directly. There's a third option. I go hunting. The SEAL commander's expression shifted from surprise to consideration. Elaborate. Volkov expects us to be reactive, to wait for his attack. He's not expecting us to take the initiative. I can use the remaining cover from the storm to circle behind his position, disrupt his command, and eliminate key personnel. Create confusion that you can exploit to break contact and move toward the extraction point. Sullivan studied her for a long moment. That's not a two-person job. That's a solo operation with minimal support in hostile territory against superior numbers. A tight smile crossed Sam's face. That's exactly what Guardian snipers are trained for, Lieutenant. Operating alone is my specialty. Reed spoke up, his tone respectful but concerned. With all due respect, ma'am, you've already broken Guardian protocols to save our asses once. This goes well beyond that. This isn't about protocols anymore. This is about completing the mission and getting that intelligence back where it belongs. Sam checked her ammunition and equipment as she spoke. I know Volkov. I've studied how he thinks, how he plans. I can anticipate his movements in ways no one else here can. Sullivan seemed to wrestle with the decision, weighing operational necessity against the risk to a single operator. And if you don't make it back, he asked finally, then you'll have bought time to reach the extraction point, and I'll have done my job. Sam's voice was matter-of-fact, without drama or self-pity. Guardians exist to ensure mission success, Lieutenant. Sometimes that comes with a cost. The cabin fell silent except for the diminishing moan of the wind outside. Finally, Sullivan nodded. Do it, but we're not leaving you behind. We'll establish a support position here and be prepared to provide covering fire when you engage. Give us a radio call when you're in position. Sam nodded, already mentally mapping her approach route. She stripped down her gear to the essentials. Her M4A1 with a suppressor attached her sidearm, 4 magazines, 2 fragmentation grenades, 1 smoke, her KA-bar combat knife, and a compact medical kit. Speed and stealth would be her primary weapons. As she prepared to depart, Mendez spoke up from his position. Staff Sergeant, why did you join the Guardians? There are easier ways to serve. Sam paused, considering the question. My father died because a sniper he never saw killed him from a position he couldn't identify. I decided the best way to honor him was to become the ghost that protects others from the shadows. She checked her weapons one final time. Besides, I'm better at operating alone than in teams. Always have been. With a final nod to Sullivan, she slipped out the cabin's rear window, instantly becoming part of the winter landscape. The cold hit her immediately, a physical force that sought any weakness in her cold weather gear. The temperature had risen slightly with the breaking of the storm, now hovering around -35°C, still lethal to the unprepared but manageable for someone with her training and experience. Sam moved through the terrain with methodical precision, using natural features for concealment, keeping her profile low, disturbing the snow as little as possible. Her white winter camouflage blended perfectly with the landscape, making her nearly invisible to casual observation. She circled wide to the northeast, planning to approach Volkov's position from an unexpected direction. The breaking storm had left a landscape transformed. Snowdrifts 6 feet high in some places, bare ground scoured clean in others, where the wind had been channeled by terrain features. Sam used these conditions to her advantage, reading the environment with the instinctive understanding of someone who had grown up in these mountains. 40 minutes into her movement, she detected the first signs of Volkov's perimeter security. Subtle disturbances in the snow pattern, a communications wire partially exposed by wind, the faint impression of tactical boot prints already being filled by drifting snow. Sam slowed her advance, transitioning from movement to hunting. Through her scope, she identified the first sentry, a lone operator in white winter camouflage similar to her own, positioned behind a fallen tree with good visibility of the approaches to the cabin. His weapon was a VSS Vintorez, a specialized Russian suppressed sniper rifle designed for special operations use. Definitely one of Volkov's men. She circled the sentry, approaching from his blind side, moving only when wind gusts would mask the sound of shifting snow. At 15 meters, she could see his breath condensing in the cold air. At 10 meters, she could make out the communications equipment attached to his tactical vest. At 5 meters, she was close enough to see the patches on his uniform. No national insignia, just the symbol of a private military contractor known to recruit former Russian Special Forces operators. Sam closed the final distance in a controlled rush, one hand clamping over the man's mouth, while the other drove her Ka-bar knife up under his ribs with surgical precision. The sentry tensed, then went limp as the blade found his heart. Sam lowered him gently to the ground, ensuring no sound would alert nearby positions. She relieved him of his radio and communications equipment before continuing her advance, now moving parallel to what she identified as Volkov's main line of deployment. The mercenary force was establishing a classic encirclement pattern, with sniper teams covering probable escape routes and assault groups preparing for a coordinated attack from multiple directions. Through careful observation, Sam identified the command position, a natural depression behind a rock outcropping that provided good cover while maintaining lines of sight to the cabin. She counted 4 personnel in the position, one of whom was directing the others with the unmistakable authority of a commander. Volkov. Even at this distance, Sam recognized him. The distinctive build, the way he moved with confident precision, the scar visible on his face when he turned to issue orders. Her heartbeat accelerated slightly, not from fear but from focused determination. The man who had killed her Delta Force team in Afghanistan was less than 100 meters away, directing another operation against American forces. Sam considered her options. She could attempt a long-range shot, but the angle was poor, and Volkov was moving unpredictably as he coordinated his forces. A missed shot would alert the entire enemy force to her presence. Better to continue gathering intelligence, disrupt their communications, and support elements first, then target the command group when the situation devolved into chaos. She keyed her radio using the encrypted frequency. SEAL 1 Overwatch. I have eyes on enemy positions. Approximately 12 personnel establishing encirclement around the cabin. Command element identified with Volkov present. They're preparing for a coordinated assault within the next 30 minutes. Sullivan's voice came back measured and professional. Copy Overwatch. Our position is secure. What's your recommendation? Stand by. I'm going to disrupt their operation from the outside in. When you hear engagement, be prepared to target any assault elements approaching from your front. Understood. We're set up and ready. Good hunting, Reynolds. Sam moved to her first objective, a 2-man mortar team setting up on the eastern flank of Volkov's position. The Russians had transported an 82mm mortar system through the snow, a significant logistical effort that demonstrated their commitment to the mission. The weapon was capable of dropping high explosive rounds directly on the cabin with devastating effect. She approached from behind, using a natural depression in the terrain for concealment. The mortar team was focused on their equipment, calculating firing solutions based on the known distance to the target. Neither man noticed the silent figure approaching until it was too late. Sam eliminated both operators with suppressed shots to the base of the skull, the M4's report barely audible over the ambient wind. She quickly disabled the mortar system, removing the firing pin and power supply for the electronic sighting unit before melting away into the terrain. Her next target was the communications hub, a compact satellite uplink that Volkov's team had established to maintain contact with their support elements. The 2 operators manning the equipment were better positioned with interlocking fields of fire that made a silent approach impossible. Sam employed a different tactic, using a hand-thrown rock to create a distraction in the opposite direction. When one operator moved to investigate, she eliminated the remaining technician with a suppressed headshot, then engaged the second as he turned back toward his position. Both men dropped without raising the alarm. The systematic elimination of Volkov's support elements continued for another 15 minutes. A machine gun team positioned to cover the cabin's southern approach. An RPG gunner establishing a firing position on elevated terrain. A sniper team preparing to target anyone attempting to escape. Each engagement was executed with cold precision. Identify the threat approach unseen, eliminate with minimal noise, disappear before reinforcements could respond. The tactics of a ghost, leaving nothing but bodies in her wake. But the loss of communication with his outlying elements eventually alerted Volkov to the threat. Sam heard increased radio traffic commands being issued in urgent Russian as the mercenary commander realized something was wrong. Проверьте все позиции. Мы теряем связь с группами поддержки. Check all positions. We are losing contact with support teams. Volkov was adapting, consolidating his remaining forces around the command position, establishing a defensive perimeter that would be difficult to penetrate. Sam had eliminated nearly half his operational strength, but the remaining elements were now on high alert, scanning their surroundings with professional vigilance. She keyed her radio again. SEAL 1 Overwatch. Enemy forces aware of my presence. They're consolidating around Volkov's position approximately 200 meters northwest of your location. Recommend you prepare for imminent contact. Copy, Overwatch. We're seeing movement to our front. Looks like they're preparing to advance under covering fire. Sam made a quick, tactical decision. I'm going to engage their command element directly. When you hear my fire, target any assault teams moving on your position. Without waiting for acknowledgement, Sam began repositioning for a direct attack on Volkov's command post. The element of complete surprise was gone, but she could still leverage confusion and aggression to disrupt the enemy's plans. She selected a position on elevated terrain that provided good fields of fire into the depression where Volkov had established his command post. The distance was approximately 80 meters, well within effective range for her M4, but far enough that a rapid withdrawal would be challenging if his security elements responded quickly. Sam set up her shot, controlling her breathing as she acquired her primary target. Volkov was issuing orders, gesturing toward a map spread on a portable table, his back partially turned to her position. Not an ideal shot, but an opportunity that might not come again. She squeezed the trigger, sending a 3-round burst toward the Russian commander. The first round struck him in the shoulder, spinning him sideways. The second missed as he twisted from the impact. The third caught him in the leg as he was falling, wounded but not eliminated. The command post erupted into chaos, security personnel returning fire in her general direction, while others dragged Volkov to cover. Sam transitioned to the remaining targets, dropping 2 more operators with precision fire before the rest found adequate protection. The firefight escalated instantly, with automatic weapons fire coming from multiple directions as Volkov's remaining forces attempted to locate and neutralize the threat. Sam changed positions rapidly, using the terrain to mask her movement while continuing to engage targets of opportunity. In the distance, she could hear Sullivan's team engaging the assault elements that had been caught in the open when the command post came under attack. The SEAL team was making effective use of their defensive position, concentrating fire on exposed enemy personnel who were now caught between 2 opposing forces. The tactical situation had transformed from an organized assault into a chaotic firefight, exactly as Sam had intended. Volkov's carefully planned operation was disintegrating under pressure from unexpected directions. Sam continued to harass the command element, keeping them pinned down with periodic, accurate fire whenever someone attempted to move or coordinate a response. Through her scope, she caught glimpses of Volkov being treated by a medic, his face contorted with pain and rage as he struggled to regain control of the situation. The radio she'd taken from the first century crackled with desperate communications as the mercenary force tried to re-establish command and control. My pod ognom sneskokich направлений. Нужна evakuacja komandira. We are under fire from multiple directions. Commander needs evacuation. Sam switched frequencies to contact Sullivan. SEAL 1 enemy command element is destabilized. Volkov is wounded but alive. They're calling for evacuation. This is your opportunity to break contact and move toward the extraction point. Sullivan's voice came back steady despite the sounds of combat in the background. What about you, Reynolds? I'll keep them occupied as long as possible, then follow your trail. Go. There was a brief pause before Sullivan responded. Understood. Moving now. We'll leave markers for you to follow. The SEAL team's fire intensified momentarily, providing covering fire for their own movement, then began to diminish as they executed a tactical withdrawal from the cabin. Sam maintained pressure on the command element, ensuring Volkov and his security team remained focused on the immediate threat rather than the escaping Americans. For 20 minutes, she continued the one-woman assault, changing positions, frequently creating the impression of multiple attackers through carefully timed engagements from different angles. The tactic was working. Volkov's remaining forces were disorganized, responding reactively rather than coordinating an effective counterattack. Then she heard the distinctive sound of helicopter rotors approaching from the south. Not the American extraction she'd been hoping for. It was too early and coming from the wrong direction. This had to be Volkov's evacuation, probably a private military contractor asset staged nearby for emergency extraction. Sam had a choice to make. She could attempt to eliminate Volkov before he escaped, which would mean exposing her position for a direct attack on the command post. Or she could withdraw and follow Sullivan's team, ensuring the critical intelligence made it to the extraction point. The mission came first, always. She fired a final volley at the command position, forcing everyone to keep their heads down, then began a tactical withdrawal toward the trail Sullivan's team would have taken. The sound of the approaching helicopter grew louder, drowning out the sporadic gunfire still being exchanged. Through her scope, Sam caught a final glimpse of Volkov being loaded onto a civilian-model Bell 429 helicopter, his face pale with blood loss but his eyes scanning the terrain with predatory intensity. He was wounded but alive, a problem for another day. Sam moved rapidly through the snow, following the subtle signs left by the SEAL team. Broken branches compressed, snow occasional blood drops from Mendez's wound. They had maintained good discipline during their withdrawal, leaving minimal trace despite their haste. After 30 minutes of rapid movement, she caught up with them in a wooded ravine, approximately 2 kilometers from the cabin. Sullivan had established a hasty defensive position with Reed and Davidson covering their back trail, while Mendez rested against a tree, his face gray with pain, but his weapon ready in his hands. "Sit rep," Sam said as she slid into cover beside Sullivan. "We're intact. Mendez's condition is stable but deteriorating. We've re-established communication with command. Extraction is arranged for 11:30 hours at a clearing 3 kilometers northeast of our position." Sullivan studied her face. "Volkov, wounded but evacuated by helicopter. He'll live to fight another day." Sullivan nodded, processing this information. "You kept your promise. You came back." A ghost of a smile crossed Sam's face. "Guardians keep their word, Lieutenant, even when breaking protocol." The team rested briefly, redistributing ammunition and checking Mendez's wound before continuing toward the extraction point. The temperature was rising slightly as the morning progressed, now hovering around -25°C. Still dangerously cold, but a noticeable improvement from the night's extremes. As they moved through the Alaskan wilderness, Sullivan fell into step beside Sam. "You said you have been operating as a Guardian for 6 years. Who runs the program?" "It's not in any command structure I'm familiar with. It's a joint special operations initiative overseen by a small committee with representatives from each branch. Day-to-day operations are managed by Colonel William Harrison, former Special Forces decorated veteran of multiple conflicts in the Middle East. He created the program after identifying a gap in how special operations teams were supported in hostile environments." "Harrison," Sullivan repeated, recognition in his voice. "Wild Bill Harrison, I thought he'd retired years ago." "Officially, he has. Unofficially, he still oversees Guardian operations from a distance. He's the one who authorized my intervention yesterday." They walked in silence for several minutes before Sullivan spoke again. "You know, Reynolds, in 20 years of special operations, I've worked with some exceptional people. What you did back there, taking on Volkov's entire team single-handedly twice, that's something else entirely." Sam shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. "I was just doing my job." "No, your job was to maintain distance and provide overwatch. What you did went well beyond that." Sullivan glanced at her. "Why did you really break protocol for us?" The question caught Sam off guard. She considered it carefully before answering. 3 years ago in Afghanistan, I was providing overwatch for a Delta team tracking a high-value target. They walked into an ambush set by Volkov, similar tactics to what you experienced. Guardian protocol said I should maintain my position and provide precision fire from distance." She paused, the memory still sharp after all this time. "I followed protocol, engaged from 1,500 meters, got some kills including wounding Volkov himself. But it wasn't enough. By the time QRF arrived, the entire Delta team was dead." Her voice remained steady, but her eyes had hardened. "I decided then that I'd never let protocol stop me from saving American lives again, no matter what it cost me personally." Sullivan absorbed this in silence, his expression thoughtful. After a moment, he simply nodded, the understated acknowledgement between professionals who understood the weight of such decisions. They reached the extraction point 20 minutes ahead of schedule. A small clearing surrounded by pine trees with sufficient space for a helicopter landing. Reed and Davidson established a perimeter while Sullivan checked on Mendez, and Sam surveyed the surrounding terrain for potential threats. Finding a suitable overwatch position, Sam set up with her rifle scanning methodically for any sign that Volkov's remaining forces might have tracked them. The area appeared secure, but experience had taught her that appearances could be deceiving. As she maintained her vigil, Sam felt a satellite phone in her pocket vibrate. She answered it while keeping her eyes on her sectors of fire. Sierra Tango 7. Colonel Harrison's gravelly voice came through the secure connection. Reynolds, good to hear your voice. Command received Sullivan's transmission. Extraction is inbound ETA 12 minutes. Situation contained, sir. SEAL team intact with 1 wounded. Intel secure. Volkov is wounded but escaped. Aurora protocol details preserved. There was a pause before Harrison responded. You broke Guardian protocols. Twice. Yes, sir. And saved 4 Americans along with critical intelligence on Russian next-generation weapons systems. Yes, sir. Another pause longer this time. When Harrison spoke again, his tone had softened slightly. Come home safe, Reynolds. We'll discuss protocol violations after you're back on American soil. Harrison out. Sam returned the phone to her pocket, a slight smile touching her lips. The old man understood. He always had. The distinctive sound of an approaching helicopter reached them 5 minutes later, an MH-60 Blackhawk coming in fast and low from the southeast. Sullivan confirmed the authentication codes while Sam maintained overwatch alert for any last-minute threats. The helicopter touched down in a swirl of snow and rotor wash medical personnel, immediately jumping out to assist with Mendez, while security teams established a perimeter around the landing zone. The extraction was proceeding exactly as trained, efficient, organized, secure. Sam remained in her overwatch position until Sullivan and his team were safely aboard. Only then did she break her position and approach the helicopter, maintaining tactical awareness until the moment she stepped aboard. As the Black Hawk lifted off, banking sharply to gain altitude and speed, Sam looked back at the Alaskan wilderness, where so much had happened in the past 24 hours. Somewhere out there, Volkov was licking his wounds, planning his next move. The confrontation wasn't over. It had merely been postponed. Sullivan settled into the seat across from her, leaning forward to be heard over the helicopter's engines. What happens when we land? He asked. Sam understood the real question. Would the Guardian sniper program remain classified even after what had transpired? Would the official record acknowledge her role in the mission? You'll file your after-action report according to standard procedures. You encountered a hostile force, defended yourself successfully, and completed your mission with the recovery of critical intelligence on Project Aurora. You were extracted on schedule with 1 wounded team member. And your involvement, Sam met his gaze steadily. What involvement? Lieutenant Guardian snipers are ghosts. We don't exist in official records. Sullivan studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. A silent agreement between professionals who understood the nature of classified operations and the need for operational security. As the helicopter carried them towards safety, Sam felt the familiar mixture of emotions that always came at mission completion. Relief at surviving, satisfaction in a job well done, and the quiet melancholy of returning to civilization after operating in the rarefied atmosphere of combat, where everything was reduced to its purest essence. She checked her weapon automatically, ensuring it was cleared and secured for transport. Her mind was already turning toward what would come next. The debriefing with Harrison, the inevitable questions about her decision to break protocol, the potential reassignment or disciplinary action. Whatever came, Sam knew she would accept it without complaint. She had done what needed to be done to complete the mission and protect American lives. In the world she inhabited, the shadow realm of covert operations and classified programs, results mattered more than rigid adherence to protocols. The Guardian had fulfilled her purpose, standing between good people and those who would harm them. No recognition would be forthcoming. No medals would be awarded. No public acknowledgement of her actions would ever exist. And that was exactly how it should be. Because Guardians didn't seek glory. They didn't need acknowledgement or validation. They simply did what was necessary, then faded back into the shadows, ready for the next mission, the next team that needed protection without ever knowing they were being watched over. That was enough. It had to be. The Black Hawk thundered across the Alaskan sky, its powerful engines fighting against crosswinds that would have grounded lesser aircraft. Inside the cabin, medical personnel worked with practiced efficiency on Petty Officer Mendez, his face etched with pain despite the morphine now flowing through his system. Sullivan, Reed, and Davidson sat in exhausted silence, the adrenaline of combat giving way to the bone-deep fatigue that followed survival. Sam Reynolds sat slightly apart, her posture relaxed but alert gray-green eyes constantly scanning their surroundings through the helicopter's windows. 6 years of operating alone had ingrained habits that didn't disappear even in presumably safe environments. Her mind was already processing the mission, analyzing decisions made, tactics employed, threats neutralized, and those that remained. Volkov was still out there wounded but alive. The Russian operative would not forget this defeat, nor would he abandon whatever larger objective drove Project Aurora. The confrontation had merely been postponed, not concluded. The helicopter banked sharply as it approached the joint base Elmendorf-Richardson outside Anchorage. Military vehicles were already positioned near the landing zone, including a black Suburban with government plates that Sam recognized immediately. Harrison was here personally, which meant the situation had escalated beyond routine operational oversight. As the Black Hawk settled onto the tarmac, its rotors slowing but still churning the air into a frigid maelstrom, Sullivan leaned towards Sam. "For what it's worth, Reynolds, you've earned my respect. Whatever happens next, know that." Sam nodded, once acknowledging the sentiment without requiring it. Medical personnel immediately whisked Mendez toward a waiting ambulance while armed security formed a perimeter around the helicopter. Standing by the black Suburban was a weathered figure in civilian clothing, his military bearing unmistakable. Despite the absence of uniform or insignia, Colonel William Hunter Harrison, 62 years old but still carrying himself with the ramrod posture of a career soldier, watched impassively as the team disembarked. His craggy face revealed nothing as Sullivan approached and rendered a crisp salute despite his exhaustion. "Lieutenant Commander Sullivan reporting as ordered, sir." Harrison returned the salute with formal precision. "Welcome back, Commander. Your team performed admirably under extreme circumstances. The intelligence you recovered is already being analyzed at the highest levels." His pale blue eyes shifted to Sam, who had approached more cautiously, maintaining a respectful distance. "Staff Sergeant Reynolds, I believe we need to discuss recent events. The rest of you will be debriefed separately." Sullivan hesitated, glancing between Harrison and Sam. "Sir, I'd like to formally acknowledge Staff Sergeant Reynolds' actions in my report. Without her intervention, my team would have been overrun." Harrison's expression remained neutral. "Your official report will reflect that your team encountered hostile forces, defended your position successfully, and completed your assigned mission with the recovery of critical intelligence. The details of Guardian support operations remain classified at levels above your clearance, Lieutenant Commander." Sullivan's jaw tightened, but years of military discipline prevented any further protest. With a final nod to Sam, he rejoined Reed and Davidson as they were escorted toward a separate building for medical evaluation and preliminary debriefing. Harrison gestured toward the Suburban. "Let's continue this conversation somewhere more appropriate, Reynolds." The drive to the secure facility took 20 minutes, conducted in silence that would have been uncomfortable between less experienced operators. Sam used the time to mentally prepare her report, organizing the sequence of events and tactical decisions that had led to her breaking protocol not once, but twice during the operation. The secure facility was unmarked, distinguished from surrounding buildings only by enhanced security measures, invisible to casual observation. Harrison led Sam to a conference room containing a single table with 2 chairs, a digital display on the wall, and absolutely nothing else. The kind of room where conversations happen that never officially occurred. "Sit." Harrison indicated one of the chairs before taking the other. No recording devices were visible, but Sam knew better than to assume their conversation wasn't being monitored at some level. "You look like hell, Reynolds." Harrison observed, his tone matter-of-fact rather than sympathetic. "Been a busy couple of days, sir." "Indeed." Harrison activated the digital display, bringing up satellite imagery of the operation area. "Walk me through it, from the beginning." Sam provided a comprehensive tactical briefing detailing her 3 days of overwatch, the identification of Volkov's forces, the ambush of the SEAL team, her decision to intervene directly, the subsequent storm, and the final engagement that morning. She spoke with clinical precision, focusing on operational details rather than personal motivations. Harrison listened without interruption, his weathered face betraying nothing of his thoughts. When Sam concluded her report, he remained silent for several moments, studying her with the penetrating gaze that had intimidated generations of special operations personnel. "You violated Guardian protocols," he said finally. "Twice." "Yes, sir. The first violation I authorized given the tactical situation. The second was entirely your initiative based on your assessment that Volkov represented an ongoing threat to the SEAL team and their mission." "Yes, sir." Harrison leaned forward slightly. "Guardian snipers operate from distance. That's the foundational principle of the entire program. We eliminate threats before they materialize, provide overwatch without direct engagement, maintain complete separation from the units we protect. You've understood and exemplified these principles for 6 years, Reynolds." "I have, sir. And yet when confronted with Volkov, you chose to abandon those principles, not once but twice." Sam met his gaze directly. "With respect, sir, the mission parameters changed. Standard protocols were insufficient to address the threat level. The SEAL team would have been overrun before long-range precision fire could eliminate enough threats to change the outcome. So you made a tactical decision to ignore 6 years of operational doctrine. I made a tactical decision to adapt to the situation as it existed, not as doctrine assumed it would be." Sam's voice remained steady. "Guardian protocols work extremely well under most circumstances. This situation required something different." Harrison studied her for another long moment before his expression softened, almost imperceptibly. "3 years ago in Afghanistan, you followed protocol exactly. Maintained your position, provided precision fire from extreme distance, even wounded Volkov himself. But it wasn't enough to save that Delta team." He paused. "That's been eating at you ever since, hasn't it?" Sam didn't immediately respond. The memory of watching through her scope as the Delta operators were systematically eliminated, despite her best efforts to provide covering fire, remained one of her most painful professional failures. "I made a promise after Afghanistan," she said finally. "I wouldn't let American operators die because I was following protocols that didn't fit the tactical reality. Even if it meant risking your own life in direct combat against superior numbers. Guardians exist to protect American forces, sir. Sometimes that protection requires more than long-range precision fire." Harrison nodded slowly as if confirming something he'd already suspected. He tapped a command into the digital display, bringing up a different set of images. Personnel files for several unfamiliar operators, all with the distinctive Guardian insignia. "You're not the first Guardian to reach this conclusion, Reynolds. Over the past 6 years, we've had 3 other incidents where Guardian snipers transitioned from overwatch to direct action when circumstances warranted it. Each time the Guardian in question made a tactical decision that standard protocols were insufficient to address the threat level." Sam processed this information with slight surprise. Guardian operations were highly compartmentalized, with operators rarely aware of missions conducted by their counterparts unless directly relevant to their own assignments. "What happened to those Guardians, sir?" "2 continued operational rotations with enhanced tactical flexibility. One is currently training the next generation of advanced Guardians." Harrison's gaze intensified. "The program is evolving, Reynolds. Your experience with Volkov both in Afghanistan and Alaska has highlighted limitations in our operational model that need to be addressed." The door to the conference room opened before Sam could respond. A man in his early 60s entered his civilian clothing, failing to disguise the bearing of someone accustomed to wielding significant authority. Harrison stood immediately, a gesture of respect that Sam had rarely witnessed from him. "Reynolds, this is David Reynolds, Deputy Director of Special Activities." Sam rose from her chair, recognizing the name but not the face. Reynolds was a legendary figure in the intelligence community, responsible for overseeing some of America's most classified special operations initiatives. His direct involvement indicated the situation had implications far beyond a routine operational review. "Staff Sergeant?" Reynolds nodded in acknowledgement. "Your actions in Alaska have attracted attention at very high levels." Sam maintained her professional composure despite the sudden elevation in scrutiny. "Sir." Reynolds took the third chair that Harrison pulled forward. "I've reviewed the preliminary reports and Colonel Harrison's assessment. The intelligence your SEAL team recovered regarding Project Aurora represents a significant strategic threat to American defense systems." He activated the digital display, bringing up technical diagrams that Sam recognized from Sullivan's description. the Russian EMP weapons system capable of targeted electromagnetic pulse deployment without a nuclear trigger. Aurora isn't just another weapons system, Reynolds explained. It represents a fundamental shift in electronic warfare capabilities. The ability to selectively disable American defense networks without triggering nuclear response protocols could create catastrophic vulnerabilities in our early warning and response systems. He changed the display to show a map highlighting critical defense infrastructure across Alaska and the northern United States. We believe Volkov is part of a specialized unit tasked with field testing Aurora capabilities against American systems. The operation your SEAL team disrupted was likely gathering intelligence on potential targets in Alaska. Sam processed this information, understanding now why Volkov had been so determined to recover the USB drive and eliminate witnesses. This wasn't just about a weapons system. It was about a fundamental strategic capability that could alter the balance of power between major nations. And White Bear, she asked. Sullivan mentioned a reference to someone called Bieli Medved in the communications they intercepted. Reynolds exchanged a glance with Harrison before responding. Anton Petrov, former KGB Directorate S officer, now operating through various private military companies. He's been coordinating Russian asymmetric operations against Western interests for nearly 2 decades. Nikolai Volkov is one of his primary field operators. Petrov was Harrison's opposite number during the Cold War, Reynolds continued. They've played this game against each other for a very long time. Harrison's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. Anton and I have history. We've been on opposite sides of various operations since the late 1980s. He's brilliant, patient, and utterly ruthless in pursuing Russian strategic objectives. The picture was becoming clearer now. This wasn't just about a tactical engagement in Alaska. It was part of a larger strategic competition between intelligence services that had been ongoing for decades. Sir, with respect, what does this have to do with my actions during the operation? Sam asked. Reynolds leaned forward, his expression intensifying. Everything, Staff Sergeant. Your decision to break protocol and engage Volkov directly didn't just save a SEAL team. It disrupted a critical Russian intelligence operation and preserved vital information about Aurora that gives us a fighting chance to develop countermeasures. He gestured to Harrison. Colonel Harrison has been advocating for an evolution of the Guardian program for several years now. He believes that while the traditional model of long-range overwatch remains effective for most situations, certain high-threat scenarios require Guardians capable of transitioning seamlessly between overwatch and direct action roles. Harrison nodded. Advanced Guardians. Operators trained and equipped to provide traditional overwatch when appropriate, but authorized to close with enemy forces and engage directly when tactical situations demand it. More flexible, more responsive, potentially more effective in complex operational environments. Your actions in Alaska, Reynolds continued, provided a compelling demonstration of exactly the capabilities Harrison has been describing. You maintained traditional overwatch for 3 days, then transitioned to direct action when circumstances required it, adapting your tactics to the situation rather than being constrained by rigid protocols. Sam absorbed this information, understanding the implications. You're changing the program. We're evolving it, Harrison corrected. The core mission remains the same, protecting American Special Operations Forces from threats they can't see coming. But the methods will be more flexible, more adaptable to varying tactical situations. Reynolds stood, indicating the briefing was nearing its conclusion. Staff Sergeant Reynolds, effective immediately, you're being promoted to Sergeant First Class and reassigned to the Guardian Training Facility at Fort Bragg. You'll work directly with Colonel Harrison to develop the training protocols and operational guidelines for what we're calling the Advanced Guardian Initiative. Sam remained outwardly composed despite her surprise. Promotion and reassignment to training duties wasn't the disciplinary action she'd been anticipating. For how long, sir? 6 months minimum, Harrison answered. We need your operational experience and tactical adaptability to shape the next generation of Guardians. You'll help select candidates, design training scenarios, and develop the protocols that will govern when and how Guardians transition from Overwatch to direct action. He fixed her with a penetrating gaze. Your experiences with Volkov, both the failure in Afghanistan and the success in Alaska, provide exactly the perspective we need to evolve the program without losing sight of its core principles. Sam nodded, accepting the assignment without further question. After 6 years of continuous operational rotations, the transition to instructor would be an adjustment, but the opportunity to shape the future of the Guardian program represented a different kind of mission, one potentially more impactful than individual operations. "What about Volkov and Project Aurora?" she asked. Reynolds gathered his materials as he prepared to depart. "That remains an active intelligence priority. Volkov survived, which means Petrov still has his primary operational asset in the field. We've disrupted their immediate plans, but they'll adapt and try again. When they do, we'll be better prepared to counter them." He paused at the door. "Your SEAL team is being fully briefed on Aurora now that they've seen its implications firsthand. Lieutenant Commander Sullivan will be working with technical experts to analyze the data they recovered and develop potential countermeasures." After Reynolds departed, Harrison remained, his expression softening now that they were alone. "Reynolds," Harrison said, his voice softer than Sam had ever heard it. "When I recruited you 6 years ago, I saw something of your father in you. Not just his skills, but his moral compass. James always knew when to follow orders and when those orders needed to be reinterpreted." Sam studied the older man's face. "You never told me how well you knew him. Some connections are better left unspoken in our line of work." Harrison's weathered face showed a rare vulnerability. "But I promised him once after Kuwait that I'd look out for his family if anything happened. Creating the Guardian program gave me the perfect opportunity to keep that promise when you showed up at sniper school." The revelation stunned Sam momentarily. All these years, she had believed her selection for the Guardian program had been based solely on her skills and aptitude. To learn that a deeper connection existed, that Harrison had known her father well enough to make such a promise, added an unexpected dimension to her relationship with the older soldier. "You did good work out there, Reynolds. Saved 4 Americans, preserved critical intelligence, and demonstrated exactly the kind of tactical flexibility I've been advocating for years." He allowed himself a rare smile. "Though I suspect your primary motivation was settling an old score with Volkov rather than proving my theories correct." Sam returned the smile slightly. "The mission comes first, sir. Always has." "Indeed." Harrison stood, indicating their formal debriefing was complete. "Get some rest. Medical evaluation at 0800 tomorrow. Then we fly to Bragg to begin work on the new program. The next generation of Guardians will benefit from your experience, both the successes and the failures." 6 months later, Sam stood watching a new class of Guardian candidates moving through the advanced tactical course she had helped design. The training facility, concealed within the sprawling Fort Bragg complexes in North Carolina, combined elements from various special operations disciplines: sniper marksmanship from Marine Scout snipers, fieldcraft from Army Special Forces, close quarters battle techniques from Navy SEALs and Delta Force. The Advanced Guardian Initiative had evolved rapidly from concept to reality, with Sam's experiences in Alaska providing the foundation for new operational protocols and training methodologies. Candidates now learn not only traditional Guardian skills, long-range precision shooting, extended solo operations, covert overwatch techniques, but also the tactical decision-making required to transition between different operational modes as situations demanded. Sam noticed the skeptical glances from some of the veteran Guardians observing the new training protocols. She understood their hesitation. Many had spent years perfecting the art of distance engagement, taking pride in never being seen or known by those they protected. The Advanced Guardian concept represented a fundamental shift in their operational identity. "You're changing what it means to be a Guardian," one senior operator had told her during the first week. "Some of us aren't sure that's a good thing." "I'm not changing what it means," Sam had replied. "I'm expanding it. The mission remains the same, protecting American operators. Only the methods are evolving." Harrison approached as Sam observed a particularly promising candidate navigating the transition from sniper hide to close quarters engagement position. "Thompson has potential," Harrison commented. "Good technical skills, better tactical judgment." Sam nodded in agreement. "She makes decisions based on the situation as it exists, not as doctrine says it should be. That's what we need." The past 6 months had transformed Sam's perspective on the Guardian program. What had begun as a temporary training assignment had evolved into a passion for shaping the next generation of operators who would carry the Guardian legacy forward. Her operational experiences, both successful and failed, provided invaluable context for candidates learning to navigate the complex decision matrices that determine when to maintain overwatch and when to engage directly. "We received intelligence on Volkov this morning," Harrison said, changing the subject. "He's recovered from his wounds and has been spotted in Eastern Europe, likely rebuilding his operational team." Sam had been expecting this. Operators like Volkov didn't simply disappear after a defeat. They adapted, learned, and prepared for the next engagement. And Project Aurora, still active, but our countermeasures are developing rapidly thanks to the intelligence your SEAL team recovered. Sullivan has been instrumental in the technical analysis. Turns out he has an engineering background that's proven useful in understanding the system's vulnerabilities. Harrison studied her expression carefully. "You missed the field." It wasn't a question. After 6 years of operational deployments, the transition to instructor had been challenging despite its rewards. Sam couldn't deny the pull of returning to what she knew best, the focused clarity of combat operations where everything was reduced to its essential elements. "The work here matters," she replied diplomatically. Harrison smiled slightly at the non-answer. "Sullivan's team is deploying next month to follow up on Aurora intelligence in the Baltic region. They've specifically requested Guardian support." Sam felt a familiar tension return to her shoulders. The anticipation of operational planning, the mental preparation for extended field craft in hostile environments. "Who's assigned as their Guardian?" "That depends on you." Harrison handed her a file folder containing operational details. "You've established the Advanced Guardian Training Program, developed the protocols, selected the initial cadre of instructors. The foundation is solid. If you want to return to operational status, this would be an appropriate mission to test the new protocols in the field." The offer was tempting. A return to operations with the added flexibility of the new Advanced Guardian protocols she had helped develop. The possibility of completing unfinished business with Volkov added personal motivation she wouldn't openly acknowledge, but Harrison undoubtedly recognized. "What about the training program?" "Captain Jenkins can oversee day-to-day operations. You've trained him well over the past 6 months. The program will continue developing whether you're here or in the field." Harrison's expression remained neutral, offering the choice without revealing his preference. "The decision is yours, Reynolds." Before Sam could respond, an aide approached with an urgent message. Harrison read it quickly, his expression hardening. "We just received word from intelligence sources in Latvia. Volkov has been confirmed as operational again, leading a team that matches the description of the force you encountered in Alaska. It appears they're preparing for another field test of Aurora components." Sam absorbed this information, her decision crystallizing. "Sullivan's team will need Advanced Guardian support if they're going against Volkov again." "They will." Harrison studied her intently, "and not just any Guardian. Someone who understands Volkov's tactics, who has faced him before and prevailed." The choice was clear now. Sam had helped build the Advanced Guardian program specifically for situations like this, high-threat scenarios where traditional Overwatch might prove insufficient. Volkov represented exactly the kind of adversary the new protocols had been designed to counter. "I'll take the assignment," she said, the decision made without further deliberation. Harrison nodded satisfaction, briefly visible in his weathered features. "I thought you might. Operational briefing at 1600 hours. Sullivan's team arrives tomorrow to begin joint planning." As Harrison departed to make the necessary arrangements, Sam returned her attention to the training course where Guardian candidates continued their exercises. The program she had helped develop would continue evolving, shaping operators capable of adapting to whatever challenges emerged in the complex world of special operations. For now, though, her path led back to the field, back to the operational environment where she had spent 6 years perfecting her craft. Back to the unfinished business with Volkov and Project Aurora. The following day, Sam entered the secure briefing room to find Sullivan and his team already present. The SEAL commander looked more rested than when she had last seen him in Alaska, the strain of combat replaced by the focused intensity of pre-mission preparation. Reed and Davidson were present as well, along with a new team member who had presumably replaced Mendez during his recovery. Sullivan noticed her immediately, a slight smile crossing his normally stoic features. "Reynolds, heard a rumor you might be joining us for this operation. Guardian support has been authorized for your mission, Commander. I'll be providing Advanced Guardian oversight for the duration." The formal language was for the benefit of the other personnel present, maintaining the professional distance appropriate for interdepartmental operations. The slight nod Sullivan gave in response acknowledged both the official relationship and the unspoken respect that had developed during their shared experience in Alaska. Harrison arrived with several intelligence officers signaling the start of the official briefing. Maps and surveillance photographs appeared on the digital displays showing various locations in Latvia where Aurora components had reportedly been observed. Technical specifications of the EMP system were presented along with potential countermeasures developed from the intelligence recovered in Alaska. As the briefing progressed, Sam felt the familiar mental transition from instructor back to operator. The heightened situational awareness, the focused processing of tactical details, the methodical planning that had defined her 6 years as a guardian. The mission would be complex, the risks significant, but the objectives were clear. Locate and neutralize Project Aurora while gathering additional intelligence on the system's capabilities. When the formal briefing concluded, Sullivan approached as others filed out of the room. "Heard you've been busy revolutionizing the Guardian program," he said. "Evolution, not revolution. The core mission remains the same. We've just expanded the tactical options available to accomplish it." Sullivan nodded thoughtfully. "My team owes you their lives, Reynolds. Whatever happens in Latvia, know that we're honored to have you watching our backs again." The sentiment was genuine, reflecting the bond forged in combat that transcended formal command structures and organizational boundaries. 6 months ago, Sullivan had been skeptical of a female guardian providing overwatch for his SEAL team. Now he specifically requested her support for a high-risk mission against a proven adversary. "Guardian snipers operate in the shadows, Commander. We do what's necessary to ensure mission success and bring American operators home safely." Sam allowed herself a slight smile, even when that means breaking a few protocols along the way. As the briefing room cleared out, Sam lingered behind studying the map of Latvia where Volkov had been spotted. The Russian operative remained a ghost haunting her professional conscience, the embodiment of both her greatest failure and her defining success. Sullivan paused at the door. "Something on your mind, Reynolds?" "Just thinking about what my father used to say," Sam replied, tracing the satellite image with her finger. "He told me that in our line of work, we don't get to choose our battles, we just make sure the right side wins." Sounds like a wise man. He was. Sam straightened, feeling the weight of the advanced Guardian insignia newly added to her uniform, a subtle modification that represented a profound evolution. "Volkov thinks he escaped in Alaska, but he just postponed the inevitable. Guardians always finish what they start." Sullivan nodded, understanding the deeper meaning behind her words. "See you at 0600. Left alone, Sam allowed herself one last look at the intelligence photos of Volkov. In their deadly chess game spanning continents and years, the next move was hers. And this time she wouldn't be constrained by outdated protocols or artificial limitations. This time she would be bringing the full capability of the Advanced Guardian program into the field. Because that's what Guardians did. They adapted, evolved, and ensured that good people came home alive to their families by whatever means necessary. Invisible until the moment they chose not to be.